Hey, and welcome to Soaring Profits Thursday Night Live. That's right, we are live, where we unveil the stories of champions, and today's guest is one of those champions. Jordan BURK had an uncle who has Down syndrome. Unfortunately, his uncle has since passed away, but he was an inspiration to Jordan and really was a big part of his life. Kind of to promote and make it into a good story, he ended up writing a children's book to promote a main character, that has Down syndrome. I thought I was being corrected. That's okay. A main character has Down syndrome called Kelly and Kelso. It's a wonderful children's book. It's back a couple of months ago. We were doing hot wings, and I met Jordan BURK through that. And I heard about what he was doing, and it's right in my wheelhouse. When I first started my career, I worked with a lot of children who had Down syndrome, helping them to learn how to speak, write, talk. And I'm going to tell you right now, there is no one happier, no one with a purer soul, no one kinder than anyone who I've met that has Down syndrome. They have a zest for life that is unimaginable. And I can't wait to learn more about Jordan's Uncle Kelly. Jordan, thank you so much for coming on Soaring Profits. Your inspiration. I love what you're doing. Like, I got excited the moment you started speaking about it. Tell us a little bit about why you started the book and what the book's about, and then we'll get deeper into all the other amazing things you do, because you didn't stop there. You just kept on rolling.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys for having me on the show, first off. So I'm excited to be here. So like you said, my Uncle Kelly had Down syndrome, and I was his caregiver for close to 14 years. I always joke and let people know that I'm older than I look. Don't let the baby face confuse you. But yeah, so close to 14 years, I helped take care of Kelly. And during the season, we would go to the grocery store or the mall or the movies, and little kids would, point or ask questions because he looked a little different and they didn't really know how to approach it. And so some parents would like tug on their kid and be like, shh, like, don't point, don't. Right. And then some parents would actually approach and be like, hey, my daughter has a question, or my little boy has a question. And I love that because it gave me the opportunity to have like a teaching moment, which I think honestly helped birth what Kelly and Kelso was now. And so, having been Kelly's caregiver for so long, whenever he passed away, I went through this grieving season where I didn't really know what to do. Right. And I always joke, I'm like, I could have done drugs, but I chose to write a children's book. But no, I decided to write something that would be impactful and change lives. I wanted something that when a child read it, it's like, man, I want to know somebody with Down syndrome. So whether they're at a park or they're at Chuck E. Cheese, a birthday party, it's not taboo. It's not weird. It's not different. It's something that's preparing them for, the future and people that they're going to come in contact with. Yeah. And I had gone out there and I ordered all these books off of Amazon, because if somebody was doing what I already wanted to do, there was no point in reinventing the wheel. Right. And so I read through them all, and I just really felt like there was not a children's book out there that showed what it was like to love somebody with Down syndrome. And so out of that, I started sketching, and I had all these like crazy ideas. And I remember one day I ran into my dad's office, and this was shortly after Kelly had passed away. And he lived to be 64, which is amazing for somebody with Down syndrome, because usually because of heart defects or, other issues that they have later on in life, they usually pass away like maybe in their 40s. Wow. And so for him to live to be 64 was a big deal. And most of those 64 years, he was extremely healthy. So we're very blessed in that area. Yeah. So I remember running into my dad's office one day, and I like sat on the edge of his desk and I was telling him about this idea I had. And I was like, I'm going to write a children's book. And he was like, cool. He's always super supportive. And I said, yeah, and it's going to be called The Downs from Down Under, and it's going to be about a koala bear with Down syndrome. And that's exactly what my dad did. He was like, he was in a rolly chair like this, and he just like slowly gave me like the slow turn, like, are you serious right now? And
all of the best intentions possible. Right? We're going to work on the marketing, son. We're going to work on the marketing.
Exactly. And so he was like, I love your enthusiasm. I love your heart. But maybe go back to the drawing board, maybe a little less pizza before you
I
go to
can't
bed.
tell you how many times I've heard Pat say that to me. I love your enthusiasm, James. I love your heart.
Well, somebody's got to be the adult in the room for most of these conversations I have with James. So I'm glad somebody was there for you as well, Jordan.
Right? No, 100%. 100%. And I always say, honestly, though, the reason I'm able to do what I do is because I had parents that believed in me from day one. Absolutely. And so I always say, if there's small businesses, if there's people in your life that you care about and you believe in what they're doing, let them know, encourage them. It's kind of the fire that keeps us going.
For sure, Jordan. So there's so many things to pick up there. And obviously, first of all, thank you so much for joining us. When we kind of stumbled upon you doing our fire hot wing, oh my gosh, burn Pat's face off night. We had an opportunity to chat kind of briefly, and it was a pleasure. You are kind of an inspirational dude when it comes to what you're doing in your space. And that's what we're here to do with Soaring Profits, telling people's unique stories and talk about a unique story. You've created something out of somewhat like a very common facet in people's worlds, but all too often undiscovered. Like you're saying, is that you have individuals at the mall and they're pointing and they're not really sure how to engage with people. And you're tearing down those barriers, right? Like that's a very powerful thing that you're doing. So you decide to start this story. We worked on the title a few times, maybe 3 or 4 by the time we got to the end of it. So you come up with and you decide to use your uncle as this main character. How is your uncle portrayed in this? What kind of stories are you telling?
So something that was really important to me is to keep Kelly Kelly.
Yeah.
And so my uncle was considered nonverbal. He had a few catchphrases he would say. So if it was a good time, like a barbecue or just a good cheeseburger, it was a happy birthday, because that just meant we were having a great time.
I love that.
He knew everybody's name except for me. He would call me Jordan Snot because my middle name is Scott. But a part of me felt like he knew what he was doing.
Yes.
I'm like, Snot is not that hard of a word to pronounce.
No.
But no, so I wanted to keep Kelly Kelly in the book series. So he loves cheeseburgers. He's nonverbal. And he has these little catchphrases that he says. But the really cool thing that came out of the book series is it was created for your typical child. So they could read it, get inspired, get excited, be knowledgeable about Down syndrome and go out and meet people with Down syndrome. Never in my craziest of dreams did I ever think that my book would encourage and inspire people with Down syndrome who hadn't seen themselves represented in children's media.
That's amazing.
And I remember this dad sent me a video of his little boy who had Down syndrome and he was reading it. His name was Nelson. And he's reading the book and he stops and he goes, "Dad, he has Down syndrome like me." And I was watching it on Instagram or wherever they sent it to me. And it's just tears because it's like a light bulb went off and I realized this isn't just for neurotypical children. The impact is so much bigger. And I kept that in mind whenever working on my second and third book is, okay, how can I make them feel seen? So in my second book, I brought in another character with Down syndrome where Kelly's nonverbal. We have Cosmo. And Cosmo works at the planetarium and he's got a full-time job and he knows all about the stars and the planets. And so you're able to see 2 people with Down syndrome, but one requires, more care than the other. And I just thought that's probably why it's my favorite book, is because it just shows kind of the spectrum that we don't really think about when you think of people with Down syndrome.
I think that's beautiful. You're absolutely right. I worked with a wide range of abilities, gifts, where gentlemen or ladies with Down syndrome can hold down full-time jobs and have conversations and talk deeply about information. And then I've also I once worked with a boy who sang, and it was very similar to what you're talking about your uncle. He would sing different songs for different feelings. So I knew how he was feeling or what he thought. If he was having fun, he sang a certain song. If he was angry, he sang a certain song. But it was all I hate when people say nonverbal, because I have never met anyone in my career that is nonverbal. There are so many ways to communicate. And
100%.
To say someone is nonverbal really makes them lesser. And I don't think that's ever fair. I think that, if they can point, if they can do hand gestures, some of the people I worked with grunted in certain ways. And it's amazing how well they get their point across. Just like I like hamburgers. I think it's beautiful. It's wonderful. So you make this book series, and it starts picking up, and then you get this beautiful, like, that is amazing to see someone with Down syndrome would push that spark in your head, that beautiful, like, motivation. But before that happened, was there any times that you were like, oh man, I don't know, like, this is probably a waste of time, this is too much, I don't even know how to get it out there? Has there ever been that moment, and how did you overcome that?
So for me, I remember sitting down and writing the book, and I did have this fear that it wasn't going to be well received. And I don't honestly, again, it's one of those things where my parents were just super encouraging. And I knew that they would be honest with me if I was
Yeah.
going to create something that would be considered offensive or wouldn't touch the masses. You know what I mean? Because when I originally started working on it, it was so personal because I was taking my uncle and imagining what would he be like if he was a little kid, right?
Right.
If he's on the school bus with his friends, he's going to school, and he's going to school in our day and age, what would that look like? And
Wow.
so in a weird way, during that season, it was super healing too,
Yeah.
because I was having to recall all these memories that we had made, not only during the 14 years, but like my entire life with him, you
Right.
know? And so recalling all of those memories and putting it into words, and how, how can I get Kelly across on paper? Um, I will say there were some moments where nerves kind of got to me, and, there, as far as the artwork side of it, because I do illustrate my children's books, the art side of it, I had illustrated other books in the past, so I knew I could,
Hmm.
but it was one of these things of like, I had never illustrated for myself, if that makes sense. So
Mhm.
drawing and being my harshest critic as well, that was kind of a struggle. But I feel like every book it's gotten better, and that's just a personal opinion. But yeah, so there were those moments of doubt, definitely in the beginning.
Well, for sure. So Jordan, you talked about your family there, and being so this is obviously their sibling, your parents' sibling.
Mhm.
Is this your father's or mother's brother?
It's my dad's little brother.
Yeah, so your dad's little brother, and then you are the second generation here. So your dad grew up in this relationship with his brother, the protector, all of these things, right? Especially as little brother, and then with the needs that he had. You come along, Jordan, and you take on to that. How do you think that it changed the way that they parented you and the supportive nature that they were for you with having your uncle in their life as well? Do you think it changed the way that they would parent a young Jordan coming along?
I feel like growing up, they always emphasized how important Kelly was.
Right.
I remember at Christmas time was a big deal because it was like
I
my
love that.
responsibility that they kind of gave to me as a little kid to pick out Kelly a stuffed animal. And I remember I would go down the like toy aisle, and I would have to touch every single stuffed animal they had until I found like the most loudest and obnoxious one they had. And that's what I would pick for Kelly, right? And then he loved Hershey's almost as much as he did cheeseburgers. And this was back in the 90s, early 90s. And so they had like these big O like Hershey Kisses that you could buy. And I think they still have them, but I remember like we'd hunt for them. And if we ever found one, we get it for Kelly for Christmas. But that was like my job to be like on the lookout. And even when Kelly came to live with me, it was one of these things of knowing, I'm trying to think the best way to phrase it. Like when we go out to dinner, he needs dipping sauce for his chicken tenders, just like I would want dipping sauce for my chicken tenders, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like just going the extra and realizing like, oh, he really likes barbecue sauce, even though he doesn't say that.
Right.
He eats the majority of it when we get him barbecue sauce, or he doesn't really like gravy, or noticing those little characteristics so that you can really benefit by taking, they can, getting tongue tied. They can, you're just noticing those little things that make
Yeah.
them so that you can
Absolutely.
better take care of them, if that makes sense.
I
Absolutely, bro.
consider it, you're kind of the ambassador, the interpreter for the world.
I love that. That's a good
Help
way.
others around you understand what he wants, what he needs when he's out in the community, and you help him to express what he wants and he needs. You're his ambassador. You're his language when he can't have it. So you notice he likes barbecue sauce. So like you tell the person that at the restaurant he likes barbecue sauce. You know that he doesn't like a loud noise or something. So you don't go into those areas with him because you're his ambassador, his protector. It's very interesting. And this is a sad part of our system in Canada. I don't know what it was like in the States because I wasn't down there. But in Canada, when I was in high school, classes were segregated. You very rarely saw anyone who has special needs. There was a lot of institutions. In fact, at your uncle's age in Canada, he likely would have experienced an institution. When I first started my career in the 90s, they kind of just pivoted to group homes. So I got the opportunity to meet a lot of people with Down syndrome who were adults that were at one time in an institution, like a mental institution. What were the challenges that you faced keeping him in the home?
So,
as opposed to like sending him here.
So I just came out with it's actually going to be released December 1st, a chapter book about Kelly's life. And it starts in the beginning. And when my grandparents found out that Kelly had Down syndrome, they didn't really even know what it was called.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But when the doctors, after his evaluation looked at him, they told my grandparents that he'd be better off in an institution because it would affect how they raised my aunts and my dad. And my grandparents had kind of already made up their mind they were going to keep Kelly in the home. So they went home and they decided to have a family meeting, and they sat down and they basically told my aunts and my dad, who my dad was about 4 at the time, this is what the doctor said. And as a family, they all decided like, no, you can't do that. He's our baby brother. And they look back and they say that was one of the best decisions they ever made as a family.
Dude, that's so beautiful. Like that is such a moving story. And I don't know if people really understand what that is, because every aspect of your family's life is at this pivotal moment, but so's Kelly's.
Yeah.
Right.
No.
Like that is such like a precipice for that entire family. And you guys made that decision to really come together, work together as a family unit. I'm sure there was arguments. I'm sure there was fights. I'm sure there was all the things that go along with family dynamics. But man, Jordan, you are a lucky man. That is a family that goes to bat for you. That is a beautiful story, pal.
Well, and the other thing that's so cool is that's just my dad, right?
Yeah.
Well, he met my mom in 1970. And so she got introduced to Kelly through college, and it was so crazy because we talk about it in this new book is when she met Kelly, she was going to become a typical kindergarten teacher. But when she met Kelly, she had such a heart for him because she had never met anyone with Down syndrome before. And because of that, she changed her teaching career and got her master's and everything. And she ended up teaching special ed for 30 years.
Wow.
And when I look at all the lives that she impacted during that time and that season, it all can be traced back to that single moment where she met Kelly. And regardless of whether she and my dad had ended up together, which they did, they were happily married for many years. But whether that had never happened at all, her meeting Kelly alone was a very pivotal moment where it changed the direction of her life and her career. And so not only do I have my dad's side of it, which you said earlier, being the protector and, raising his kids to treat people like Kelly with love and compassion and understanding. But then you have my mom's side of it where she was introduced to it, wasn't raised around it, but then immediately realized, these are the people I want to advocate for on the daily.
Talk about a very quick way to weed out the trash in the dating world, though.
Right?
Like, come on, you're going to meet my brother and, it's not your thing. Bye-bye. All the best. Yeah, I know exactly who you are on the inside in 5 minutes of spending time with my family. I love that, man.
Yeah.
Dude, that is such a fantastic story.
She didn't stand a chance, though, if I'm being honest, because she walks off. She's homecoming queen.
Yeah.
And she walks out, and here's Kelly holding this huge banner that says Melba across it. And all she could see was his nose, right? And his eyes. And he's holding it on the side of the field. And that was her first introduction to Kelly. And so how can you not fall in love with Kelly in that moment?
Amazing.
So.
That's amazing to think that one young man in a moment changed not only her life, changed your father's life, and now changed your life. And so your mom touched many special needs souls. And because she had the love of your Uncle Kelly and the understanding of your Uncle Kelly, she had a deeper understanding, because not all teachers that I work with do. They're great teachers, but they just don't understand what they have to do to help someone with special needs. But she would really know that. And those kids that she taught would really bring them out and make them stronger, better, give them a platform to stand on and push them farther. And then she raises a child that does the same thing, because you're doing the same thing on a grander level. Your books are touching so many people.
Absolutely.
That's unbelievable. And this all started with Uncle Kelly. And I think that that's incredible.
No, it's insane to me because there was this season in my life where I was taking care of Kelly and I had all these hopes and dreams of wanting to work in animation or be an artist or do this or do that. And I had kind of put them all on hold to help take care of Kelly, but it never really felt like that, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You just wake up daily and you just kind of do life, you know? And so it never felt like, man, my dreams are on the back burner. Right. And so how cool is it? And I'm going to try not to get like super emotional here, but like, how cool is it that because of Kelly, I'm able to do what I'm doing today? Yeah. You know, and it's like, though that time and that season wasn't wasted. No. You know, I always think of the scripture where it talks about the years that the cankerworm ate. And it's not even that those years were wasted. It's just, it's so cool that that season, it was kind of like my life was on pause with Kelly. Now I'm being projected into or like thrown into this world of like advocating, and we're working on, you know, a cartoon as well. And then we got the books, and there's just like all these amazing things that are happening.
But none of it would have been possible unless you went through those processes. And you know, I'm 37 years old. I think you're probably fairly close to me in age, right? And it's one of those things is that there's times in our lives as young men, and we kind of look around and we're like, are we wasting time? What are we doing? How it's hard to get traction when you're in your late 20s, early 30s sometimes. But everything you're learning every day is how to solve problems, solutions. Every day you're building that traction. And then all of a sudden you got Jordan, who's coming up with amazing characters and amazing stories. I'm glad we stayed away from the Australian theme, but you know,
hey, I do have a koala. There is a koala in the books. So, but he doesn't.
You got your koala.
Have Down syndrome.
He's very fully.
Yeah,
I love it. Well, maybe you can tell us a little bit about the characters that you decided on, why you went with the characters the way that they are, and maybe a little bit of an adventure that one of them has went on.
So in our very first book that we have, Kelly is he's like joining this Pinewood Derby race, right? He's got this, he loves cars. He's excited. He wants to be a part, but he doesn't know really where to start in building his own Pinewood Derby car. So in this book, we are talking to kids about kindness because his neighbor Aaron steps forward and realizes, wait a minute, I think I could help him with this. So Aaron and Kelly work together and do teamwork to build this little Pinewood Derby car. And it basically is showing kids, you know, here's the thing. When I created my books, I didn't want a Down syndrome book or a vitiligo book or an alopecia book. I wanted to be able to have these fun stories, and these kids are just a part of it, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, man.
And so, yes, that we have a character with Down syndrome. We have Kelly. We have Gentilly, who has vitiligo. Yes, this is our first book, Kelly and the Great Pinewood Derby. And there's Professor Kelso holding on the back. And Kelso is Kelly's imaginary friend. He's a little stuffed animal that Kelly carries around with him throughout the books. But no, it's been a lot of fun. And to be able to do it in such a fun, colorful way, I think really grasp kids' attention, as opposed to being super educational and it being boring or lame, you know?
Yeah. And Jordan, you know, the last thing, you know, a 4, 5, 6-year-old kid wants to start diving into is, you know, the encyclopedia on what all of these words are and how they affect people.
Yeah.
So to be able to do what you're doing, bringing some fun, bring some personality, dude, I love it. I think it's so cool. Now, you've obviously had been doing this for a little while now. What sort of traction are you getting? Because I see you're on Amazon here. Where are people able to buy your books right now?
So you can purchase our books on our website, which is kellyandkelso.com, or we are on Amazon as well. Not only do we have the books, but we have the plushies. I got Professor Kelso right here and Gidry Gator. Those are both characters from our books. Not only like do we have the Kelly character now, but we're branching out. Because as I started speaking at schools, I started having parents come to me and they were like, oh my gosh, we love your books, but our little girl has vitiligo, or our, you know, little boy has autism and or alopecia. And so I've been trying to branch out and create more characters to add to Kelly's world. There's Uncle Kelly right there.
I love it. Wow.
So first 2 books, basically Kelly's the main character. He's owning the show. In our 3rd book, we got Gentilly, who has vitiligo. And for those of you who don't know what that is, that's where you lose the pigment in your skin. And so she lives in New Orleans, and they go on this big adventure where they learn to love the skin they're in. And that's where you meet Gidry Gator. He's an albino alligator, and he bounces around on his tail, and he's a mess. And he like, I love him. He's probably the most relatable to me, because Professor Kelso was like very like pristine and tidy and everything. And then like Gidry knocks down the front door and just like slides in, and he's like knocking everything over. He's like a bull in a china shop. And I'm 6'6", so I can relate to that. Like,
whoa,
Cracker Barrel is not my friend. So
I relate to that because I'm 6'3" and I grew up overnight, and I break everything. Like I can't go to a party without knocking something over. It is wild.
I'm over 6 foot and I'm the little guy in the room now. Holy mackerel.
Right? I just want to throw out, I have a good friend. All three of us have a good friend named Sia who has a show that's coming out. I just want to throw up her promo. And then I want to get back to talk about how the people I've worked with Down syndrome, and I'm sure your Uncle Kelly taught what patience truly is. So here is Sia. Gosh, you got to love Sia. Amazing producer. Here comes her show.
Are you looking for something a little more FUN and less FUD when it comes to technology and cybersecurity in TV and media? Enjoy Checkpoint Real Talk.
We're gonna have to figure out the angles on that. Maybe get a full screen. Either that, or I can't pick my nose and stuff. It's gonna be awful.
It's awful if you can't pick your nose.
Right.
So my career has been a long-lived. When I started, it was a lot with children with Down syndrome and adults with Down syndrome, and a lot of it was learning to slow down, learning to have the patience, learning to you're in a hurry to get to school. And you have to wait till they get their shoes on the way they want to get their shoes on.
Yeah.
Or you have to wait to get their coat on the way they want to get their coat on. Because if you rush it, it does not make it faster.
God forbid it rains.
Or God forbid it rains. Yeah, no, absolutely. So did you find that your uncle taught you like what real patience is?
No. Yes, because there were times I felt like when I'd work with Kelly, it felt like time was moving backwards.
Yes.
Because I'd be like, come on now, we got to go. But honestly, I think the most beautiful thing that Kelly taught me was to be excited about the little things in life.
Right.
I remember I'd be in a hurry and wouldn't have time to do dinner, and I'd just go through McDonald's and get a cheeseburger. Not many people are going to be excited about McDonald's, but you give Kelly a cheeseburger and he would like kiss it and say like, hallelujah, happy birthday. And like, it was like the best thing he had ever had. And I'm like, that is like a $1.25 cheeseburger. You're probably eating horse meat. And yeah, he's like so excited about it.
Yeah.
And in those moments, I realized, and at least in America, we go, and everything has to be the absolute best. And sometimes there's beauty in just taking a step back from what's going on around you.
Yeah.
And just being thankful. I feel like being thankful is one of the things that helps de-stress me. Too, with everything that goes on with Kelly and Kelso, because I get so excited or so bogged down with everything that's happening that sometimes it seems like a lot. And I think the healthiest way for me to handle all of that is to take a step back and just count my blessings. And I know that sounds super cheesy, but just focus on this process started 5 years ago, come December. So it hasn't even been going on that long. And to think about what we've accomplished and where we're at, like, I'm pleased. I'm like pat myself on the back. Like,
no, but blessed. And I talk a lot about that in regards to like having grace, right? There's something beautiful about taking that moment and stepping back. And often when we first started Soaring Profits, we were doing some really deep interviews with people that were victims of, awful sexual assaults by like notable figures in their community. And you hear these people's stories and they'd curl your toes, the trauma that these people had went through. And then all of a sudden you see that they wake up in the morning and they can do all the things that you're doing in your day. And somebody who hasn't went through that, like there's a piece of grace that goes along with that and respect for that other person and understanding that can come into that. And I think that when you experience people with disabilities or differently abled is I think a better way to maybe explain that. You can sit there and you can love and enjoy all the victories that they've had. Like I had a friend of mine who he broke his neck in high school diving into a pool, and he was a paraplegic. And this guy was an athlete growing up. He ended up being a world championship wheelchair basketball and rugby player. Played for Team Canada, all these sorts of things. And I remember at the time when we were in high school, it's like, your life's over.
Yeah.
Like it's over. You're done. Like this is going to be catastrophic. This guy has lived a full life. He's married. He has children. Like it's wild.
It's a perspective change. You feel like you're going this direction and life throws you a curveball, and you have the opportunity whether you want to completely stop or if you just want to change your focus.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
No, and that kind of thing. So you're going into schools now and you're dealing with children on that level. Obviously, children, out of the mouth of babes, as they say. Yeah. What are some of the questions and what are some of the wild things that you're hearing in the school that kids are throwing to you?
So I read my book, and I'll have a little kid on the front row raise their hand. And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, my uncle has diabetes. Is that like Down syndrome? And I'm like, maybe we should read my book again.
Kinda. Yeah. I like that.
No, kids are great. I think probably one of the times I felt the worst, and this was my second school to ever speak at, is this little boy raised his hand and he said, Steven in our class has Down syndrome. And I was like, awesome. Well, I'm reading to the right people, right? So I take off and I'm just encouraging Steven, and I'm so excited and all this kind of stuff. And I look in the back and the teacher is going, and I don't know what to do. Again, this is my only second time public speaking. And I'm just telling them all these things they can do with Steven, and how they can, incorporate him on the playground and at lunchtime and going on and on and on. And so when it was over, all the kids dispersed, and there's this little boy sitting there in tears. And the teacher comes over to me and she's like, so Steven doesn't have Down syndrome? And I was like, that's good to know. Thank you for that. He wants the merch table. It's his for free.
His buddy set him up.
Yeah, I felt really bad for Steven, but I mean, they now know how they can include and play with Steven. But
poor Steve. Pat, do you keep on putting a Zen sandwich there?
I see it. No, I thought you were.
No, it's like he's in the green room waiting. I don't know what's going on. I'm not putting it up.
Can you get it off? What?
From?
What is happening?
I don't know, but I'll be right back.
Well, I'm sorry, folks. I think we got a bit of a problem. Mark, he's always in the green room around here, so James is going to have to check that out. But Jordan, again, out of the mouth of babes. What an interesting story. So you started in the schools. What?
James, you good?
You good back there, James? Mark, leave him alone. Leave him alone. What? Oh, what?
It's fine. Everything's fine. We're good.
Oh, man.
Good. I got it all figured out. I'm sorry to interrupt. Yeah. So it's amazing what kids will say to you. I think it's incredible. I've been in a few schools myself, and it is very different. You never know. And I'm going to warn you parents out there. If you have a discussion at your school, at home, just before they leave to school, we hear about it. We know all your dirty little secrets. And I bet you during your book, they'll put up their hand. They're like, my mom does this. My dad. It's hilarious. Yes. I love it.
One school I went to, it was right after spring break. And I was asking them, I was like, where'd you all go? Because I don't know about y'all, but spring break for me growing up in Texas, we'd go visit the grandparents, usually do home projects. And these kids were traveling to Paris and Tokyo. And I was like, Paris, Texas? And they were like, right, France. And I was like, what are y'all doing? So, but yeah, no, I love the questions, and kids, they spill it all. When I started this 5 years ago, I was about 60 pounds lighter. And so one of the questions, one of the kids raised his hands, and I'm like, yes, sir. And he's like, so why do you look different on the brochure? Because of course I'm going to use a skinny photo on the brochure. And I'm trying to process what he's saying. So I'm about to tell him about all my trauma. And I'm like, okay, so when my uncle and then my dad passed away, and then my friend leans up behind me and she's like, quit explaining yourself. Next question. And I was like, next question.
I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah, no, that's
kids are
totally
great.
true. You tend to answer children like an adult would, and you
Right?
end up oversharing sometimes when
Uh-huh.
really all you have to do is say, I lost some weight. And they'd be
Yeah,
like,
you're right.
oh, okay. And
Yeah,
they'll
yeah.
move on. I think that's incredible. So you got the book deals, you got a new book coming out, and now there's something else that might be coming out
Yeah.
soon. Why don't you tell us about that? Because that's pretty exciting, man.
It's crazy exciting. So I think about the last 5 years and what we've accomplished with our book series, right? And we've only had 3 books out. We have 2 coming out, but we've only had 3 over the last 5 years. And I think about all the testimonials that have come in, and like worldwide, which blows my mind that there's people in Australia and Peru and, you know, the UK that know about my Uncle Kelly, who grew up in a town of 300. And, you know, the doctor said let's institutionalize him at birth. And, you know, my grandparents stepped in, and you look at this man and all the lives that he impacted, you know, during his life here on earth, but now is continuing to impact lives.
Yeah.
It's insane. And so I was talking one day to one of my friends, and I was like, you know, I want to go on the Kelly Clarkson show, and I write her every Wednesday, and I have for like 4.5 years now. And it's like on the verge of being a stalker, but not really, because we're best friends. She just doesn't know it yet.
Right.
And so I'm on LinkedIn, and I am writing everyone imaginable on LinkedIn that has like worked for Kelly Clarkson and has her on their resume. Like, I don't care if you brought her a Kleenex, I'm writing you. And so in the process, I see off to the side, Jordan Curley, which I know you guys have talked to, and she's phenomenal. And I think she'll be on
The
later,
30th
right?
of November.
30th of November.
Yeah.
And she's phenomenal. So I see her and we start talking, and I realize like we share the same heart. And it was one of those moments where you just connect with someone and you realize something's different. Because I talk to a lot of people about, you know, what it is we're doing with the books and what my goals are and my dreams. And there's like a pat on the head, kind of, that makes sense. Like, I'm glad you're doing it, because I wouldn't want to.
Sure.
And with Jordan, it was like, how can I come alongside you, and how can we do this together?
Beautiful.
And so it's Jordan and Jordan, which is that's great. But no,
Jordan with Y.
Jordan with a Y. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or as I called her, I called her Girl Jordan for the longest, because I can't be Boy Jordan, because it sounds like Boy George. And so I was like, you're Girl Jordan. That's your label. That's your name.
Right.
But so when I met Jordan, I started talking to her, and long story short, she's a producer. She's over a very well-known kids cartoon at the moment. And we started talking about what would it be like to take these books and these characters and make it into a cartoon. And then my thought was, well, if we've been able to do all these amazing things with just a book series and get all these testimonials, imagine what we could do with a cartoon.
Absolutely.
That's insane. And I can only write and draw so much, but if we had a cartoon, we could cover so many other abilities.
Right.
You know, and not just that, but cover different, you know, nationalities and cultures. And I feel like so often, and I've taught at churches and schools, that kids that I've spoke to are in their little bubbles, right? They go to soccer practice, they go to Chick-fil-A, they go home, they go to school. That's it. Like, they're in their little bubble. And there's not much of they're just not very cultured outside of that, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And cartoons and television today, especially for children, there's just not a lot of input there that really opens their mind and their eyes to what's going on in the world around them in a healthy way.
Absolutely.
And so for us to be able to create something and then have Uncle Kelly be a part of it, that's even cooler.
Yeah.
You know, it's super.
No, I think it's beautiful, Jordan. And you know what? You bring me back to the original cartoons that we grew up on, and even before, like even old people like James, you know, Bugs Bunny, you had all those guys.
Yeah.
There was a humor, there was a spontaneity of the comedy, but they were introducing you to Beethoven and Mozart these other messages
problem
that were being
solving,
right.
And real problems.
The depth of those cartoons now, when you kind of look back, yeah, it was a little slapstick at times, but there is a real story that could be garnered from that. So now that you're building on this, what is the next steps in putting this together? Obviously, you guys are putting the storyboard process. What happens now for you guys?
So we're working on the storyboard. We've got our script. We're ready to go. We've got our character designs, which we've been spending maybe the last year and a half on. And right now we really need investors and partners. So the money side of the whole production thing is where we're at right now. So we need people that want to come alongside us, that have the same heart and have the same desire to see the world change through children's media. So
I think that's super cool, pal.
That's incredible. I agree with Pat. So I go back to my children and the shows that we used to watch with my kids, or I tried not to watch, but the dad always was a fool, and wasn't intelligent, and was not like a good person, good role model. Usually, like, was the person you didn't follow. The mom was never around. And the kids were just going to do whatever they wanted to do. And they seemed spoiled and entitled. And it really didn't teach the lessons that Sesame Street and Mr. Dress Up and those people taught us. And it's just refreshing to have a cartoon that's going to do that. And not only do that, but people with Down syndrome, but all of special needs children, like with autism, anyone who's different, anyone who is out there and feels like they're different, your cartoon can help them. And I think if there's an investor out there, they should click on that QR code at the top there, and you get in charge with Jordan. I mean, get in touch with Jordan with a Y.
Yeah,
the girl
Jordan,
producer Jordan.
He will set you up. I think this is a wonderful venture. And I think it's going to take off. Like the colors, the excitement of the books on cartoon format will be amazing. Like, so who will draw it? Like, because do you have any cartooning in your background? Is that like how? Like, it's not easy to go from book.
No.
Especially that kind of book, because it's not like a huge 45-minute story.
Yeah.
Right?
So I would be the creator, which means
Right.
I come in and I help with our scripts, I help with character designs, and I keep the heart flowing the same, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah.
So that, because if you get too many voices, it loses the character of what it originally was meant to be and do. And so I come in and just kind of like finalize, if that makes sense, the big picture. And so producer Jordan, girl Jordan, has a team of amazing animators that are excited about the project. We've already got a little bit of animation up. If you'll go to our website at kellyandkelso.com, you'll see a link to the show page. And if you'll click on there, it's got a lot more information about the show. The show will be called Kelly and Friends, because it's going to be introducing Kelly's friends from all around the world. And one of my favorite concepts about the show is we have this stuff called surly slime, and it's not a good thing. It's something you definitely don't want to have on you. And the kids that are making poor decisions, that are being rude, that are being disrespectful, that just aren't fun to be around, they're covered in this orange goo, and it's called surly slime, because there's our bad guy, Samuel Surly, that likes to throw this slime on kids and make kids do like the not right thing. And so hopefully Kelly and his friends can step in and teach kids the right way to behave and respond to situations. And through that, love, kindness, acceptance, they will start to shed the surly slime that's sticking to them.
Jordan, I love this, man. I think that's such a cool concept. You've kind of built out a whole idea here. This is going, I hope in 35, 40 years, we're looking back at this as like Mel Brooks and The Simpsons. And, you've made an entire career out of this, because I think with what you're doing and the legacy of your uncle, you're putting an amazing spin on this and sending this out in the world for all the right reasons. Pal, I love what you're doing. When people click that link in the top, that's taking them to their website. Is that the best way to get in touch with you?
That is the best way to get in touch with us. You'll see a contact us on the website as well. And if you message us, then I will get it to our producer. Amazing, but one of the things that I really loved is what I just shared with you guys about the whole surly slime bit. I was telling my buddy about it, and it's going on, and he said what he loves as a dad is being able to have his kid come in from school and be like, whoa. Like, I think you got some surly slime on you there. Like, or you might want to wipe that off before you come in the door.
I love
because he's
that.
like, sometimes I'm like, how's your day? And they're like, fine. He's like, what did I do?
Right.
So I'm
No.
excited. I love the concept of the show. It's very different than what we have going on in the books, but the heart is the same.
I think that's beautiful because you're really teaching children, all children, how to deal with their emotional states. And right now, that's a tough thing. We have kids that just this year were the first time they entered a classroom, and they've had 2 years of education, through COVID, and everyone was isolated. They don't have the interpersonal emotional states that someone who has been in kindergarten and senior kindergarten and grade 1 do, because they miss that. Being on a video chat like we are right now, we don't really know how to share. We don't have to deal with like using other people's crayons or borrowing things,
Patrick
or someone poked me or whatever. And that's a whole emotional development that people have lost over 3 years. And to have a show where you can go, sir, like I got surly
slime
on me.
Yeah.
Understanding that's like a visual. It's like a tactile. Every child knows what slime is and what it's like when you get it on you. It's really hard to get off. You have to wash it off. And that feeling.
Well, and it's contagious, honestly, because think about it. As an adult, if you walk into a room and someone's in a bad mood or they're grumpy or they lash out at you, it's real easy to have that attitude stick to you, if that makes sense. And then you carry it on and you don't realize why you're barking at this next person when you were in a good mood 10 minutes ago. So,
well, it's funny you say that because I don't know, about 4 hours ago, I was hanging out with Pat, and Pat goes, "Go eat something." I'm like, "What?" He's like, "You are just in a mood. Go eat something. I don't know what's going on, but go do it."
It's like being dad around here. Every once in a while, you just got to feed them, slap them in the ass, and send them at the door.
Have y'all seen the Snicker commercials where you're not yourself? Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
But it's totally true. Like if you walk down a hall and you say to people, "I really like your scarf. Wow, you look pretty today. Did you write that? That's amazing." All of those 3 people will go on and be happy. But if you walk through and you like push someone and you say, "Oh man, you look stupid today," that also is contagious. And it really is the choices we make is how we're seen in the world and the effect we have on the world. And one small moment in time for us can be a moment for life for someone else.
They replay your words too. I think that's really important to teach kids is how powerful our words are. Because what you might have said in a bad moment or mood that you've already forgotten about lives on with that person.
Yeah. Well, so this is totally unrelated, but related. So there was this young girl playing on the playground. She was all by herself standing there. And I went over to her and I said, "What's wrong?" She's like, "I got no one to play with." So I introduced her to this like exuberant young girl that I knew would take her under her wing. Anyway, I forgot about it. Didn't even know it happened. I do it often. I don't even think about these things. Grade 8, they're about to graduate. They both come running up to me and they say, "Do you remember how we met?" I'm like, "Not a sweet clue. I assume at school. I don't know." And they told me the story that because I put them together, they were best friends for 8 years. And it's amazing those little things that are nothing to you become someone's whole world, like your Uncle Kelly, like your dad, like your mom, and like you, Jordan. You know what? I hate to end this, but I really think we should. I love everything you're doing. I can't wait to talk to Jordan with a Y so we can explore it a little bit more, dig deep into the finances with Patrick, how to produce a book, produce a movie, that kind of thing. Dude, you are an inspiration, a champion, and I'm really glad we got to unveil your story. The moment I saw you through the screen standing beside Sia and you told me about it, I was like, "Oh my God, like this guy is changing the world." It is beautiful to see and to know that there's a young child out there that is smiling and their life is a little bit lighter because they read your book. I don't care if anyone else sees it now. That moment will last in my heart forever, but I imagine it'll last your heart forever. And I think that is so beautiful, Jordan. And I think you're an inspiration. And I hope you all the luck in the world. And I hope if you're an investor out there that you contact him and help get this thing off the ground, because I would love to see that. I think it's a beautiful thing. Profiteers out there, I love y'all. Please Take your time. Have patience with each other. We're going into trying times. Pat talks about it all the time. We are going to go into places where people are losing houses, where people won't be able to feed themselves, where people are going to be angry, and we have to be patient with each other. The whole world is our family. Everyone in it is our family. And if we can't band together over these next few years, we're going to go in some very dark places. So please, with me, be kind to each other. That's all I'm asking. Let's heal our minds, bodies, and souls together. Patrick?
Jordan, pal, again, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
You guys.
I'm super glad that we decided on the name change and didn't head to Australia with that one. I love that we've incorporated some of the characters, but pal, truly, there's a couple of moments during this conversation tonight where I could see my family and your family, right? The passion and the power that has come from your uncle Kelly that just resonates to a young man like yourself. It's a beautiful story. I think what you're doing is fantastic. And I've got a connection that I'd love to put you in contact with. Children's books by Tana Banana. She's doing a whole series on reading very, very beautifully and eloquently. She's available on Spotify and a lot of other podcast platforms. I'd love to get a handle of your book and let her do an awesome reading. She does a fantastic job. Check her out as well. Jordan, get in touch with this guy here. I'm looking forward to looking 30 years down the road when, the Road Runner and Bugs Bunny are a thing of the past. And we've got, your crew there to look forward to now. So profiteers out there, we did financial fitness with Patrick today. Had a great guest on. You're going to see that out on Wednesday morning. We're always doing new, cool, and exciting things. And we're talking about the world that's changing, like James is saying there. But when you've got people like Jordan, the two Jordans, Jordan squared, when you got those guys out there that are changing the world and touching people in a fantastic way, it definitely gives us a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel. Jordan, at the end of all of these, we kind of stick our guests. It's the one thing that we stick them with at the end, and it's to leave on kind of a word of wisdom as we sign off. And this is your time, pal. From me, folks, like, subscribe, and share. Thank you for joining Soaring Profits, and let's make some money together, folks. Jordan, you're up, brother.
My word of wisdom to you guys is be kind, because you never know what someone's going through. We all put up walls. We all put up this face of everything's okay, but you never know what's going on behind closed doors. So always be kind. So love them, folks. They need it.
Nailed it. Beautiful, pal.
All right. Well, thank you guys for having me on. This was a blast. It was fun.